A News Central now at this hour begins in Abuja, where the Senate Committee on Finance has commenced a two-day public hearing on the tax reform bills after weeks of debate. The hearing, which gathers input from key stakeholders, aims to shape Nigeria's evolving tax administration framework. The chairman of the Senate Committee on Finance, Senator Sani Musa, confirmed the Red Chamber's readiness to begin deliberations, stating that the committee will consider 2 bills per day during the session. Among the bills under review are the Joint Revenue Board Establishment Fund Bill, the Nigerian Revenue Services Bill, the Nigerian Tax Administration Bill, and the Nigerian Tax Bills. The President of the Nigerian Senate, Godswill Akpabio, is expected to deliver a keynote address and also declare the public hearing open. The President Bola Tinubu, had transmitted the 4 tax reform bills to the National Assembly on October 3rd, 2024, which sparked intense controversy among lawmakers in different parts of the country. Despite the controversy, the bill has scaled second reading, setting the stage for today's public hearing, where stakeholders are expected to make submissions before further legislative action is taken. The reforms are expected to play a key role in the federal government's fiscal policies, with key focus on revenue generation, economic revival, and infrastructural development. The House of Representatives is also scheduled to hold its own public hearing on the bills tomorrow, Tuesday, following their passage for second reading earlier this month. And now joining us to give us a bit of insight is Ufeli. He is a lawyer and tax consultant, and he joins us live from Buffalo in New York, USA. Well, Evans, many thanks for joining us. Let's just get started. What exactly are you expecting to come out of today's public hearing? Let's start there.
Yeah, I'm expecting that by provision of law, public hearing is critical in legislation. And this is the time when the entire public is called upon to make input on the ongoing legislation. Because as of now, it's still a bill. Okay, so Nigerians are expected to go there and, vent all over the world when tax reform are determined, because it's a public legislation. It is important that the public input is injected, or an avenue, an opportunity is given to the public to so make their own input on it. So I expect that there'll be widespread consultation. I mean, especially that the major tax institutions in Nigeria, okay, have been invited. I mean, they are FIRCS and the rest of them, the all institutions that relates to finance in Nigeria are invited, including the CBN governor, the banks, and all financial institutions in Nigeria. Then the general public also have been invited. The senators representing the people all over the country are all present to determine this bill, because when you talk about tax all over the world, people get agitated. The reason people get agitated is because they want to be sure whether this tax bill will determine their survival or not. Especially in the case of Nigeria, where during the campaign, the president had promised to widen the tax net and tax people more. Okay? When the president has said that, even though in the current reform, in the bill, if you look at the details of it, it's not necessarily meant to tax people more. It's just an attempt to ensure compliance, projection, and safeguard the tax itself when it is collected. Because what we have already, this particular bill is going to repeal most of the tax laws that we have before. Okay, I think what we were left with is the petroleum income tax and the VAT and some other taxes. All the company income tax, personal income tax, all those ones are going to go off. These 4 legislations are going to repeal them. And when that is done, in this new reform, there are a lot of provisions that have been made to ensure that the tax evasion will not be the case. And most companies that operate without even registration and they evade tax in the country, just like the Binance case that is going on. This very attempt on this bill is going to eradicate all that. Right. Those companies that operate underground and they evade tax, they don't contribute anything to the country, and they make humongous profits.
All right.
So this bill is going to take care of all those issues.
Right. Well, and let's talk about specifics here, shall we? What unique factors are stakeholders and other Nigerians looking out for, especially in light of the heavy political coloration it has brought along the way?
Well, let me get the question right. I didn't get your question.
I was asking about unique factors that you expect, stakeholders to highlight or bring to the fore. Stakeholders and Nigerians, since it's going to be a public hearing, what do you think the unique factors that is going to come out from today's public hearing, just given how this has gotten very heavy political tint on it?
Yeah, I know there's the issue of regional agitation and tax collection and the rest of that, especially on the VAT, where, there's this heavy argument on alcohol, tax on alcohol that is shared across the country, but a part of the country do not believe in alcohol and whatever it is, but they share from the tax. That is one issue. That one is anchored on the VAT. Which is not actually fully regulated or connected thereto. But the truth is that they must consider equity. There must be a level of national contribution, okay, so as to enhance the formidability and practicability of these bills. Okay, so it's at this level that is considered. And we have seen that the North, actually, they have come to a consensus and they have actually agreed with the totality of it, because one of the governors then and some of the lawmakers then had contended, very seriously about the fact that the peculiarities and the cultural expression of the North must be considered in the tax reform, and that no tax reform should inhibit religious practices and cultural practices of the people. It should be made in such a way. But I think that was just, a coloration of difference. Okay. During the debate, it was fully entrenched and extended. And at the end of the day, they got to understand that even the current tax system that we have, that is even the one that inhibits cultural and religious affair activity. But the current one that is being proposed is much more liberal. Okay, much more liberal, have a widespread capacity to deliver more, and the tendency that they are going to have even compliance in the reform is higher than what it was before. Okay, because this reform was actually copied from the very functional society where tax have made a lot of impact, because economic growth cannot be determined without taxation. Taxation, falls heavily on the issues. When we look at our GDP, how much does tax make up on our GDP? Most countries, tax come as number one before any other resources is considered. Okay, but here, our GDP, our taxation is far flung. It's not even a considerable issue, much so that in the 21st century, where people are downplaying mineral resources and increasing capacity for generation in other areas, we should be looking at those areas. And for those who have the fears that they are going to be taxed more under this dispensation or this reform, they should go and look at the bills one after the other and look at the provisions therein. It's not necessarily so. It's I will commend this government to come up with this, to have come up with this tax reform at this time.
Right, Evans, one has to ask at this point, it's passed through second reading. If this bill eventually gets passed into law, as it looks like it's most likely going to, where will that leave the Nigerian tax landscape? Now, we know that the IMF has, told us severally that our tax contribution to our GDP is quite low and it needs to be increased. It seems that this government is very keen on doing that. Where do you see it leave the Nigerian tax landscape? Very quickly, because we're out of time. We're pressed for time, please.
Well, it really was in a better place, because it's going to create a safeguard for us. Most of the companies that are not really compliant, we by this comply, and individuals and multinationals as well, because it comes with some level of heavy penalty. It comes with some level of it's very meticulous and widespread, so it's going to give us that capacity to determine really what our tax net should be and what should, those who do businesses alike should contribute rightly, to recover, because tax evasion is actually an offense. Okay, so by the time we begin to talk about it and make a lot of legislations rightly so around it, the better for us, because we're not going to rely on natural resources for how long will you do that? I mean, the world is changing. So there is this contributory tax fund that we, leave us in a better place. And a lot of countries have succeeded with this. I mean, we should do that. And corresponsively, the government must also create avenues, and an enabling environment for this company to strive, for individuals to thrive too. Because if you don't have that enabling environment, like as it is today, I mean, the issue should be discussed pari passu. The condition of doing business, okay, the ease of doing business, and the general business environment of the Nigerian state must be discussed and looked into. There must be a reform to that effect too. Tax reform it cannot be done in isolation, otherwise you are going to have non-compliance. But if you do it in a way that you're able to structure the country together with its business environment to create that tax reform, then you are heading somewhere. And I think the government should have that in mind and do same.
All right, well, Evans, we must say thank you, Evans Ufeli, there all the way from Buffalo, New York, from the U.S. to just give us a bit of insight following today's public hearing on the Nigerian tax reform bills.